Hey, it's Hank, and I am here with Sherri at Sova Hat Shop right here in Saskatoon. Why? Because I love hats. As you all know, I've got like a zillion hats. This one right here, this is the person that made it. I could go on, but could you tell us what got you into creating premium hats? How did it all start?
Well, you know what? It's a crazy story that gets crazier. But I was living in Calgary. I was teaching there, and literally, like I was taking some design classes after school, and I always wanted to be a fashion designer. So I was doing pattern drafting and couture and all this sort of stuff, and like I literally just got it into my head. Like I've always loved hats, and I started making them, and like an obsession, sort of making them. And we moved to Saskatoon, and my husband said, you should start selling them. And I said, I feel that things need to have a certain quality before you start selling them. So I wasn't ready to. You only make a first impression once. So I'd like to work on my skills, and, it took me a few years, but I started selling them, like craft shows, that sort of thing. And one thing led to another. I started selling more, doing more shows. I had a chance for a pop-up shop, which I did about 7 months. Then it went to, my first store down in the Drinkle building. And then I moved here about 6 years ago, sort of, ground level. And I've just been making them, and things just have, very organically rolled along. And I had a lot of people, say, how did you learn how to make a hat? And I said, well, basically I'm self-taught. Like I've never, I just always sort of knew how to make a hat. But when I felt I'd gotten to a certain level, my gracious husband started sending me to master classes overseas. So, I've done some in France and Holland and England. I studied with the late Queen Mother's former milliner. And so, I got a good sort of, a lot of good, tips, and basically I just honed my skills. So I stopped teaching, which is what I used to do, and started doing hats full time. A couple years ago, onto a different story, my family had been, we'd been searching for my dad's father. My dad was a war baby, and he was in a displaced persons camp in Germany with his mom, and they ended up in Canada. And meanwhile, his father was a French soldier. And when my Baba came here, she didn't read or write, and I think that they had conversed in German. So, every time we asked what his name was, she gave a different answer. Like we didn't know what his name was. We didn't know how to spell it. We just had a picture of him. But anyhow, we've been through genealogists and DNA tests and this and that, and we've been searching. Like my dad is 76 this year, so he's been looking probably for about 65 years. And 2 years ago, like a miracle happened. We actually found the family. We found my dad's family south of France, and he had found out that his father had died the month that I started making hats. But my dad has 3 brothers in Nice, so we traveled down there a couple summers ago to meet the family. I have all these first cousins and everything, and found out that my grandfather, before the war, was a hat maker. So
it legit runs in the family.
I think it's genetic memory, because I just sort of always knew how to do it. It just made sense. So
where does the name Sova come from?
Well, okay, that's another thing. Sova comes from my dad took his mom's last name because he didn't know what his dad's last name was. So it is Sovin. Sova is the feminine form of it. And it actually means owl in Ukrainian. So it's a family name.
Oh, wow. And I know we're running out of time, but everybody can see the beautiful hats behind me. They're all amazing. Everybody needs to get one. The thing that I appreciate most is that every time I look for hats, I see so many women's hats, but it's tough, especially like Saskatoon, to find a premium men's hat.
Yeah, well, I do those too.
Yes.
And I'm starting to have a lot of fun with it. I have a good group of guy friends, and they're called the Men of Sova, and we put out a calendar every year and to show off the hats. And so, there is a good group of men walking around the streets with my hats, and you can always get them here, custom or, right off the shelf.
Awesome. Thanks, Sherri.
Yep.